Yeah, good evening, guys. Ken at Tortoise Capital. This is the Foundations course check-in for August 3rd, 2023. We got a full load of questions, so let me just plow right into it. The first one, Damien asks, biggest challenge is dealing with a big R loss. Need to find a way to reduce them to maximum 1 R loss. Absolutely agree. The standard way to look at system problems are these. There's only two kinds of problems. There are skill problems in which the answer is education, training, and work. And then there is will problem, and then it's usually emotional state control and true intentions. That's all it ever is. So I'm going to address the skill problem first. I don't know what leads to the big R losses, so I don't know which of these problems there are. But if it's a skill problem, it would probably come down into one of these things. You've got a hardware problem where the infrastructure that you have is not capable of keeping up with the decision making actions and implementation required from your system. So your system software ouch, or your decision making is making a decision, and that's translating to some hardware, and then the hardware is too slow or incapable of executing the decision into actions in time. If that's the case, replace the hardware. If that's not the case, maybe it's the software. Maybe the decision cycle that I am taking is too slow to account for a rapidly changing market that then moves into action. So it takes me too long to detect a critical state. And by the time I detect it, the window to operate is gone and it's already moved out before I could recognize it. In which case, we need faster software, simpler systems, earlier alerts, or a different time frame. It may be that there's a problem with the trade frame. For example, if I am using an intraday system and I'm placing trades here at the end with an MMRB that is appropriate for that time frame, and then I'm trying to hold that same very tight risk box through a gap into tomorrow's day trade, and the characteristics of the gap are much wider and larger than my tiny little risk box, then what I have is a framing problem, that I'm using an inappropriate frame for the circumstances I find myself in. So frames that work intraday on certain time periods don't work when you add a particular gap, and that could lead to an R. It could also be that the frame is too tight, that there's not enough, if that's the idea of the trade, and I don't have a realistic buffer of safety around it, it could be that I'm trying to overly fine tune, over engineer a solution that is being overcome by not errors in this system, but just uh, environmental noise, that the market itself is noisy. And when I get my signal, that the market noise is coming in and making me. So I've got to do is I have to account for system noise or environmental noise by having an extra buffer around that. Now, here's an example. If I have a PSAR flip as the basis of my hypothesis, and I have enough time for that trade to unfold, and I think that it can go up here to my target, and I have this much of a risk box, and I know that a violation of that level is my exit signal. If it turns out that there is enough environmental noise that by the time price comes down and hits my exit signal, that I get slippage and delay and spread, like those things are reliably saying that my fill is typically down here. If I set that equal to 1.0, but I'm getting fills down here at 1.4, because I'm not accounting for realistic market noise in my operating system, I could be getting routinely an extra zero point 0.4 loss, which is why I say that uh, if that's the case, you will then be tempted to exit somewhere in the middle of this noise at like zero point 0.6, so that either zero point 0.4 slippage allows you to stay underneath 1.0. But that defeats the whole purpose of the trade frame, which says that this space between the PSAR flip is noise, and there are no valid signals with information in there. It's all noise. So a decision to execute here at minus 0.6 to account for that noise is not a good idea. What you should do is set that whole distance to 0.6 and give yourself a cushion of 0.4 to account for the normal slippage, spillage, and the delays. That's what I mean by accounting for environmental noise. Your trade frame has to make sense within the logic of the system, but it must also account for the time of day, environmental noise, and the volatility that happens between the time that you implement a decision until the time that it actually goes into action. There's a certain amount of time that happens, and then price is going to have some kind of volatility between the decision and the action. In other words, there's many a slip twixt the cup and the lip. So you have to account for that by widening your stop to give you a protective buffer to protect that system against normal systemic noise. So one of the things that we try to do when we're designing systems is to try to find environments in which we can reduce noise, either because we're picking a quiet time of day to trade, in which case the size of the moves still have to be large enough, and the environmental noise. What we would love is to have environmental noise down, but trade signal volatility up, so that all the moves can be attributed to the theory of the trade and not to exogenous volatility. So that's simply a matter of figuring out what is the time frame I'm trading, what's the difference between environmental noise and systems noise. So the answer to all of these have to be related to system or strategy specific and the environment they're operating in, and then allowing standard work in order to reduce the losses to within the manageable 1R. It normally means doubling the size of your initial stop. That if I think the market signal to get out is here, that I'm just going to make that a 0.5R for position sizing risk and give myself a 0.5 buffer. And then I'm going to treat that whole range as a 1R loss. And then I have to say, do I still have 2 units of 1R above? In other words, I need a 4-to-1 reward to risk ratio against the execution risk of 0.5. So that's how you handle skill problems. You apply skill. If you have will problems, that's a different story altogether. This has to do not with hardware or software, but with the space between your ears and the connection to your heart and the connection to your gut. Somewhere in there, there is a wedge between decision and action, between information and a decision, and then an implementation of the action. Like if I haven't figured out my information requirements to make that decision, then I'm going to spend a lot of time dicking around inside here trying to gather more information because I don't know what I need. So I freeze under pressure, and then I delay a decision, and that's always bad because it goes against you, and then you feel terrible, and you should. or you shouldn't, depends what you feel, what you feel. But if it goes in your favor, you say, oh, somehow I'm going to create a reason to say that was my trader intuition being excellent to know that I should delay and get more information. So that's false. So do I have enough information to make the decision? How fast can I make the decision given the right amount of information? How fast can I put it into action? Now, after I make a decision, so I can look at the amount of the amount and type of information I need. I can take a look at my way of processing it into making the decision, and then I can determine how fast can I put it into action. There is usually a wedge of willpower between the act of making a decision and the act of putting it into action. So we got to know, is there a wedge that is causing you to not put that decision into action? That normally happens. You're making a decision with your head, but the real decision to act is either in your heart or in your gut. So you better figure out, where is the decider? It's usually here in your lizard brain, in your gut. So if that is freezing, if that is a fight or flight, and we can't resolve what to do, that normally leads to freezing, which means no decision, which means you get to eat the entire loss. So we've got to learn how to trade at a level of risk where we can put the risk intention of the gut into the trade frame. So that's accounted for. It doesn't have extra reasons at the moment of decision to intervene. It normally intervenes when it knows or it feels that you haven't done a professional job on skill, or that you haven't done enough prep work and get enough repetitions to provide evidence that we know what we're doing. And to get a lot of reps on a single system, that means your position sizing and risk per trade has to go down so that you can be calm enough to gather the information to provide the evidence to tell the gut to just calm down. We've got data and you've done your job by informing our framing. It can be that there are other things besides the trade that are affecting your emotional state. Like if this is my trader's mind over here, and I've done all the work and I'm making my decisions, but I got other things going on in my life, and I don't have a wall of separation between me trading and me living my life, like the phone is ringing, or I got to respond to emergencies, or I haven't offloaded work and people are coming in and bothering me, or my environment is too noisy and things happen over here and it distracts me and creates emotional distress, or whatever, or my fitness is not good, or my diet and food is not good, and my exercise. So all these exogenous things can be affecting the physical and mental plant of the trader to get in the way. So maybe it's that. Maybe it's the time of the day that your trade frame is happening over here and it's working successfully, and now it has moved past the region of fit and you're still letting it trade because the emotions that you feel about this excellent trade are causing you not to follow the rules because you have fear or greed. So it could be just the time of the day and could be emotions. It could be that you don't have alerts in enough time to allow you to go from information to decision to action, and to that when the information comes in and causes a decision to be made, if you know that that generates emotions, you need time to process the emotions into a steady state, to get back to the zero state, to make the decision, and then get through the wall to overcome the hurdle to action. So this all takes time. So you have to bake the time into the cake so that you can handle the emotions professionally. Because if you don't handle them professionally, you'll be rushed into making a decision, and that will unsettle the gut brain, because you're not giving it the respect it deserves. So you've got to figure that out. Is it fear of missing out? Is it the size of position that you're trading is causing emotionality? Is it your intention? Is it your genuine intention to win? Are you in it to win it, or are you in it to lose? If your intention is to lose, then all of the will problems are going to have to work harder to overcome skill so that you can still lose with the winning system. So I want to know, you want to know, what's your real intention? Why? Why is that your intention, and how do you know that that's your intention? Well, that better be connected to your purpose and your mission and your identity. If you say that your purpose, mission, and identity are to win because of all the rational reasons, but you genuinely have an untreated condition where your real deeper intention is to lose, then all of the words that describes why you want to win are not dealing with the central issue of why you want to lose. And that needs psychological and emotional state treatment. So what is your intention? If your intention is genuinely to win, then your habits, mindset, attitude, and behaviors must be professional so that you can turn will problems, solve it by becoming professional, and then treating skill problems in a professional manner. Any other intention is going to fail in the market because the market feeds professionals with everybody else. That's all it does, is to separate professionals from everybody else. Doesn't care who you are if you're not professional. There are professional, and then there is not professional. If you're in this camp, it doesn't matter what flavor or why. If you go into the market, you are there to feed professionals. Their job is to eat you. And any other mindset in your mind is going to keep you in the non-professional area. So figure out what the issue is and fix it. Don't trade at higher than pilot and prototyping or for training purposes until you figure out what actually it is. But you cannot trade at production level until you solve this problem, if that's the problem. If it's this problem, then you just got to ramp down your position size risk per trade until you develop the skills to overcome the particular technical problem. So that's that.